Welcome. Please comment where you're watching from in the world. A few years ago, my boyfriend and best friend of 4 years had just dumped me. I was using this website, Meet Me, to meet people in my area while I was in college. My profile clearly stated that I was not explicitly looking for anyone to date, just wanted to meet new people. I had just been dumped, so I was really trying to put myself out there, and I'm not really the type to go out. In my area, there is a giant dance-a-thon that my university did every year to raise money for a children's hospital. I had someone message me and ask if I had heard of it. I told him my dance team usually performed at it every year. He told me he was actually one of the children that was supported by the event when he was younger. I thought that was really cool, so I asked him a little about his experience with that and genuinely thought it was interesting. After a while, that conversation was kind of dead, and I didn't really have much else to say, plus it was getting late, and I kind of wanted to go to bed. I told him so, and after about 10 minutes of laying in my bed trying to sleep, I got another notification. I glanced at it real fast, and this dude had honestly sent me a novel. After this event, I swiftly deleted the account, so unfortunately I don't have access to the exact messages, so I'm going to do my best to remember. The first one went a little something like, "Look, I will be honest, I really want to keep talking to you. In fact, I'd actually really like to take you on a date sometime. You seem like a really nice girl and very sweet and interesting. I think we would get along extremely well. I am kind of alone in this word." Insert long-winded commentary about his loneliness here. He also did not use any punctuation, so it took me a long time to dissect this. I responded and told him I wasn't interested. He was about 7 years older than me, I was 20 at the time, and tried to say goodnight again. Then he responded with another novel, along the lines of, "I don't think you understand. You are perfect for me. You were made for me. I'm sure of it. God speaks to me, you know. God wants us to be together, and we will be. One day you will be mine." I'm trying to be polite because he was so nice earlier, and I guess I'm naive. I don't totally know, but I kept responding, trying to let him down easy. Here are some more highlights. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But God has decided this. Who are we to deny him of his plan? Someday in the future, we will end up together. You will realize it soon. We're going to have 3 children. I know their names. 2 boys, 1 girl. God spoke their names to me. I wrote them down when I was 7 years old, and I still have the paper. Do you know how I know you're going to be my wife? Because I wrote your name down with it. You will be my wife. Don't make a mistake. God is talking to me now. He's saying your name to me. I can't let you leave. At that point, I blocked and reported him, noped the hell off the site, and went to bed all creeped out. Morning came and he had found me on Facebook, and he was going on and on and on, starting with comments along the lines of, "Where did you go? How could you do this to me? You're denying your fate." He did it all night. I freaked out, told him to leave me alone pretty aggressively, and blocked him. I deleted all of the social media apps off my phone for the next few days. I asked my roommates to stay at home with me. They agreed after I told them what happened. I was actually genuinely afraid this dude was going to come find me. I mean, he was local and I had made nice conversation by telling him my major and some clubs I was in. He could have showed up anywhere, but thankfully he didn't, and that was the end of that. I met Yasmin because our dogs fell in love first. Mine, a graying mutt named Pilot, has a weakness for orange tennis balls and charismatic strangers. Hers, a cinnamon-colored Saluki mix named Nura, moves like a dancer and looks at you as if she can see the story you haven't told yet. We were on the same coastal path in San Diego, mid-afternoon sun, wind pushing salt into our hair. Nura stole Pilot's ball and sprinted a delighted figure 8 around our ankles. By the time we coaxed the truce back with treats, we were laughing, and I'd learned 3 things. Yasmin had moved from Casablanca 6 months ago, she preferred momentum to plans, and she'd never snorkeled a Florida reef. "I want coral that glows and fish that look like confetti," she said, flicking sand off her knuckles. "I want a safety briefing, a backup plan, and a lifeguard who likes us," I said. We grinned at the mismatch. Somehow it felt like a dovetail. 2 weekends later we flew to Key Largo. I built a checklist on my phone: reef-safe sunscreen, electrolyte packs, spare mask straps. Yasmin brought curiosity and a pair of reckless sunglasses that made the water look like a postcard. At the marina our boat waited under a peeling sign that read La Sirena. The captain had a faded tattoo of a mermaid on his forearm and a voice that carried without effort. "Calm day," he said. "You 2 picked right. We signed waivers." I read mine twice. Yasmin signed hers with a flourish that landed on the margin. As the boat idled out of the channel, pelicans arrowed past like sleepy missiles. The water shifted from green to a loosening turquoise. I checked my gear, mask, snorkel, fins, the GoPro I brought to overdocument things, and then I checked hers. "Your strap's fraying," I said, running my thumb over the nicked silicone. She squinted at it, smiled. "It's cosmetic. If it breaks, we fix it. I don't want to spend the day tying knots." "I have an extra," I offered. "Devin," she said, tapping my chest with 2 fingers, "if we think about every tiny thing that could go wrong, we'll be 80 before we get wet." We grinned. I let the strap go, mentally pinning a bright red flag to it anyway. Over the reef the captain tossed anchor, and a red dive flag bobbed like a toy heart. "Stay together," he barked. "If you see jellies, don't be brave, be smart." Yasmin flashed me a peace sign and rolled off the side with clean grace. I followed with my careful, unglamorous slide. The first breath through the snorkel is always a coin toss for me. Some part of the brain insists it's wrong to put your face in water and inhale. But then the body remembers. We floated in a world that felt invented. Parrotfish writing bright curses across the coral, a nurse shark tucked into a ledge like a rumor, sun smeared into ladders by the swell. Yasmin's legs scissored ahead of me, the white bottoms of her fins flashing like handkerchiefs. She angled toward deeper blue. I hesitated, then kicked after her, the water cooling a degree at a time. We hadn't yet agreed on hand signals beyond the obvious okay sign, and a thumb toward the boat. I caught her eye and pointed up, making a little circle with my finger to suggest we surface and recalibrate. She gave me an exaggerated later shrug and dove, sleek as if the ocean had been expecting her return. The turquoise deepened to cobalt. My chest tightened, not with air hunger but with an old story. 9 years old, a rip current off Torrey Pines, my uncle's hand on my collar, the shore refusing to get closer. Planning has been my life jacket since. When I leveled with her, the water between us trembled, tiny bells. A bloom of jellyfish pulsed, translucent umbrellas beating like soft hearts. Yasmin's eyes went wide, the snorkel in her mouth chattered as she inhaled wrong. A gulp, a flood. She froze, head tilted back, the universal posture of water where it shouldn't be. I slid to her side, one hand on her shoulder, the other guiding the mouthpiece out and up. I could feel the tremor running through her, a deer poised between flight and collapse. I pointed gently toward the boat. She nodded, coughed, tried to kick. A swell arrived with comedic timing and shoved us sideways. Her fin connected with my ribs, sharp, then a blooming ache. I grunted around my mouthpiece and didn't let go. We moved as a single, clumsy animal. Breaking the surface felt like punching through a membrane. The boat was 30 yards off, the red flag bobbing. I waved and saw the captain's arm lift in acknowledgement. We paddled. Somewhere under the simple splashing, I heard a sound like a rope sawing. I glanced at the dive flag line. The water around it was slick glass, no wind riffles, but the rope pulled taut, and the cleat on the gunwale groaned against nothing, a muscle clenching in a sleeping arm. On deck, the captain hauled us up with practiced dignity. Towels swallowed us. The world simplified, wood, sun, salt, breath. Yasmin's hiccups arrived in tiny explosions. The jellyfish bells had beaten in that exact rhythm. I realized, the sea mocking our bodies. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded too fast. I hiccup. "I wanted to be," hiccup. "Brave." She tried to laugh and sounded strangled by embarrassment. I handed her water. She drank, steadied, then looked at me with a ferocity I hadn't seen. "San Diego is enormous," she said softly. "Sometimes being bold is easier than being the new girl who gets lost in a grocery store." I sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder, towel to towel. "When I was 9, I told her," a rip grabbed me. "Ever since, I plan everything like I can bargain with water." I smiled because the ocean does not bargain but habits persist. Hand signals, shorter dives, movie nights with pause buttons. She huffed a laugh that finally sounded like her. And maybe my mask strap shouldn't be held together by vibes. I remembered it and flipped open the GoPro housing to distract both of us. Salt still freckled the lens. We scrolled through a dozen video snippets, her slicing through ladders of light, me hovering like a cautious satellite. Then frames that snagged the breath in my throat. In clips where I'd hung back and drifted out of view, there was a third swimmer between us, slightly behind Yasmin. Not a fish, not a trick of glare. The body moved with the lazy confidence of someone who knows the route. The face was occluded by a swarm of bubbles that never popped, silver coins that refused to spend. Is that? Yasmin started, then stopped. We listened to the hum of the boat, like it could explain it. I scrubbed back and forth. Sometimes you see what you expect, sometimes you don't. The swimmer persisted. In one clip a school of yellowtails pivoted, as if commanded, and looked straight into the lens. I had the uncanny sense of being watched by something that didn't need eyes. We set the camera down. The captain came forward with our masks. Odd, he said, half to himself. Strap on this one's perfect, and he handed Yasmin a gleaming loop of silicone unblemished. Mine, when he passed it over, sported a tidy fray where I'd felt it earlier on hers. We both stared. We must have mixed them up, I said, though I remembered the moment with humid clarity. My thumb on her strap, her grin, my mental red flag. Boats are tricksters, the captain said, which wasn't helpful and also wasn't wrong. We didn't go back in. We sat with towels clutched like talismans and watched the reef glitter from a respectful distance. The flag rope lay slack again, obedient. The jellyfish drifted farther off, bells winking like polite applause. What a nightmare. I matched with Curtis over a dumb meme about elevators, 2 buttons, both taped with out of order, and the caption, "Choose your fighter." I liked that he replied with, "Stairs are the underrated rom-com lead." I'm Anna, born in Sao Paulo, producer of other people's adrenaline. He's Curtis from Detroit, practical romantic, allegedly working on his height phobia. The rooftop bar sat 27 floors up, and the elevator hiccuped on the way, stalled between 18 and 19 long enough for the lights to do a tiny seizure. He cracked a joke about bonus floor, but his knuckles stayed pale on the rail. The roof glittered, glass windscreens, potted palms, a line of tables posing for sunset. Wind stole napkins and a little dignity. We ordered oysters and something citrusy. You know the myth, I teased, tapping the shell. He smiled, brave and shaky, then gripped the table like it might try to leave. The first disaster started as a toast. Curtis stood to clink glasses and prove he was fine. The wind shoved. His knee bumped the table. A full water carafe rushed toward me like a tiny glacier. I dodged. The deluge found the neighboring influencer's sequins. I am so sorry, he stammered, fumbling napkins, which the wind immediately redistributed across the skyline. The influencer hissed. I reached for his sleeve. His arm vibrated like a plucked string. Far away, a glass shattered. A single office tower blinked its lights in slow Morse. SDAY, my brain translated, unhelpfully. Curtis's phone compass spun like a kid on a swivel chair. He checked the bar's QR menu for distraction. It flashed a regulars column with his name in it. He swallowed. I've never been here, he whispered, as if the building could hear. Oysters arrived, piled on ice like small moons. He took one, hands finally steady, and said, "To facing things." He leaned too far, trying to show me the view past the windscreen, and tapped the tempered glass. A security alarm chirped once, sharp as a bird. Every head turned. A server hustled over with diplomatic eyebrows. We're good, I said, smiling my producer's smile. Curtis sat abruptly, legs wobbling, and his knee knocked mine hard enough to rattle the plate. An oyster jumped ship, skidding into my lap. Cold brine found the exact path only liquid and fate can find. I hissed. He went scarlet. I should get more napkins, he announced, and then his chair snagged the tablecloth and yanked it a heroic inch. Miraculously, nothing else fell. The influencer gave him the kind of glare you can feel on your scalp. In a window across the way, 2 silhouettes mimicked us a beat late. One standing, one reaching, choreographed déjà vu. I waved experimentally. Only one double waved back. The elevator display near the bar read 33, though our button panel down in the lobby had insisted 27 was the top. The palms leaned toward us as if listening. Fresh air? I suggested. We have air, he said, and heard himself. Yes. Stairs. His voice was too loud. A couple glanced over. He stood, forgot the step behind him, windmilled, and grabbed the nearest thing, me. His hand caught the thin strap of my dress. It held like a hero for a count of 1, and then surrendered with a tragic little sound. Wardrobe malfunction hovered at the door, cleared its throat, and decided to stay outside for now. His eyes went huge. I didn't, oh my God. He shrugged off his jacket so fast he almost flung it off the roof and draped it over my shoulders like a penitent magician. I burst out laughing because the only other option was fire. We made for the stairwell. He pushed the door with unnecessary drama. It thunked open onto blessed, boring concrete. On the 12th floor landing, the air calmed. His hands shook. When I was 6, he said, staring at nothing, I fell off a ladder trying to impress my cousin. Scab from ankle to hip. My dad said, bravery isn't borrowed from a height. And I keep trying to borrow it anyway. I told him the truth I usually slap a joke over. I make jokes so I don't feel like a coward when I'm scared. He nodded, grateful for the confession. Somewhere above us, the bar's music muffled itself into a pulse that could have been a heartbeat or an apology. Mezzanine? I said. Ground-adjacent victories? He smiled like a boy who's just learned the rules and likes them. On the mezzanine lounge, we ordered sliders and gave the night new metrics. Distance to the exit, number of intact glasses, volume of our own voices. He texted the influencer a gift card through the restaurant app with a note that said, I was the human storm. I am sorry. I squeezed his knee under the table in the sanctioned way. Light NSFW for the gods of algorithm. We split one oyster here, at a sane height, for science and a tradition I didn't want to abandon to a bad moment. Saving the rest, I said, for a braver day. Your call. He exhaled into the jacket still around me. On the way out, we passed the lobby display. It flickered from 27 to 33 to a blank screen. The palms in the entry didn't lean. Outside, the building returned to being a building. Curtis held the door for me without trying to hold me together, and that felt like evidence of learning. At the corner we looked up once, together, and then didn't again. He said, next week, floor 8. I said, we can pretend the elevator is an elevator and not a test. We grinned, inventorying the small, unfancy bravery of choosing the next step instead of the top. I met Diego in the comments of a map. He posted a thread about taco geometry, angles of fold, acceptable drip routes, tensile strength of tortillas like it was civil engineering. I corrected his fold taxonomy, politely then less politely. He countered with charts, and we slid into DMs. By the time he said, Red Lantern Crawl Thursday? I already had 3 stalls in mind, and a top I only wear when I feel like trouble. The market was a tunnel of paper moons and smoke. Our first oyster tasted like a green wave. He lifted his shell and said, evidence supports aphrodisiac, control group needed. I clinked, pleased. At the chili oil counter, I leaned in for a whiff, and the spoon slapped back, painting his jeans with a crimson bullseye in the worst possible place. He laughed too big, ears scarlet. Targeted strike, he said. I tried not to stare at the geography of his disaster. I snapped a spicy selfie, angle high, one shoulder, lantern halo, and meant to send it to him. My treacherous thumb launched it into the family group chat. Aunties detonated stickered gasps, be modest, gifs, a rogue sermon. Heat climbed my neck that had nothing to do with chilies. Regroup? Diego offered, cheerful, trying to take the heat off me. We ducked into a side alley. Somewhere, cleavers thudded in unison. A busker in a fox mask tipped his head too slowly as we passed, then, impossible, waited at the next corner. Google Maps spun like a bottle. Every turn rerouted us back where we started. I know this grid, Diego muttered, offended on behalf of his inner compass, and steered left with confidence that felt borrowed. We stopped at a honey stall to reset. He bought a tiny jar, wagging his brows. For later experiments, he said, voice pitched private. YouTube-friendly translation, consensual dessert, indoors, no cameras, no stickiness near delicate terrain. I rolled my eyes and said yes anyway. The label listed both our birthdays. Coincidence, sure. Then bees arrived, 3, then 5, then a slow, patient halo. Night air was cool. Bees should have been in bed. My phone pinged. A brand new account had posted a candid of us at a stall we hadn't reached yet. Caption, turn left for a secret. Another ping, another future photo, me laughing under a neon crab, Diego pointing. Try the red sauce. I showed him. He grinned, then didn't. Somebody's running a cute little stalker hunt, he said. At the noodle cart, he tried to reclaim dignity with a dramatic long slurp demonstration. 3 feet of chili slick ramen ribboned up. Halfway in, the spice ambushed him. He coughed, a starburst, and launched a comet of broth onto his already doomed jeans and a stranger's white sneaker. The whole lane inhaled. He apologized to everyone and no one, mopping with napkins that dissolved into papier-mâché. My aunties pinged again. Somewhere in a shuttered shop window, the fox mask watched us from its own reflection while the sidewalk stayed empty. We escaped to a milk crate with waters. I'm not usually this much, he said, chilly freckles on his wrist. My ex called it a messy heart. I see stains and hear her. I surprised myself. I make jokes when I don't know where I'm standing. And I send selfies to the wrong people when I need proof I exist. We sat with that. The bees loosened their circle and drifted off like a yawn. We wrote rules on the back of the honey receipt. Check the recipient twice. No alleys that the map can't name. Big streets only. No slurps for the camera. Back on the main drag, the market behaved. A stallkeeper hummed Ararang exactly the way my grandmother did. The tune followed me for half a block, then stopped when I did. Normal, I told myself. Nostalgia has a good ear. At the crab stall from the creepy preview, we did not try the red sauce. Diego bought plain skewers and held them out like a peace treaty. No heroics, he promised, elbows tucked safely inside the borders of his body. We ate, shoulders almost touching, breath finally even. The new account pinged one last time, our backs as we turned to leave, the fox mask watching from a dark window. Good job. Go home. I didn't show him. He'd done enough apologizing for one night. For the record, I still slipped the honey into my bag. For later, I said, and he caught the meaning, blush reigniting in a very good way. Indoors later. Consent and towels later. Absolutely no capsaicin anywhere near skin later. We crossed under lanterns that flickered like thoughts. Maps quit spinning. The fox mask, when we finally passed that first corner, was propped empty on a crate, eye holes facing the street. Alone he crawled out and lifted into the ordinary dark. At the curb he tried a normal-sized joke. Next time I demonstrate noodle technique, I'll do it near a drain. I snorted. Next time we pick a place where the only thing following us is the check. He offered his sleeve over a puddle. I stepped around it on my own. We stood there a second longer than strangers do. Text me when you're home, he said. And, if tonight's a maybe for later, it can be a yes for another later. Deal, I said and meant it. The honey clinked in my bag like a promise that belonged to four walls, a lock, and absolutely no red sauce. I come from a small town in Canada. We only have 2 bars in the whole place, and they are frequented often by the locals in the winter and summer. Same old people that know each other, some get along, so do not. In the summertime we get a lot of cottagers and people from the city. We like to call them cityots because some of them can be really douchey, rude, and simply have no regard for politeness. Well, one night we were at the local bar and having a good time. I went there with a girlfriend of mine and her 2 friends whom I have never met. But they were really nice but not my type. I see a Cadillac Escalade all black with chrome rims and a white Mercedes pull into the parking lot. I was kind of intrigued, so I made sure to take note on who walked in the door. I suddenly feel a touch on my shoulder, and it's a young Arabic/Pakistani/Indian man asking me to dance. I politely declined. I must say I am not racist, but he wasn't my type. I like metal look. I found him to be very weird as he was sitting at the bar staring at me. He takes out his cell phone, takes a picture of me. The flash was the dead giveaway, and seems to be sending it to someone. Within 5 minutes, those people who I saw pull in the parking lot earlier come inside. It is an older Arabic Pakistani Indian. Forgive me, I come from a small town in which the population is pretty much white, so I am not sure exactly the race. He looked about 60, he had 2 middle-aged men with him, and 1 younger male about my age, who I must say, was pretty cute. I continued dancing with my friends on the dance floor, but couldn't get past that creepy feeling I was being glared at. My friend tells me that those men are staring at me and pointing, and it's kind of freaky. I decide to get off the dance floor and go sit down with my friends and have some drinks. The older man came over to my table and tapped me on the should and asked me to come over so he can talk to me. I walked over and he said, "I want to introduce you to my son." He waved his son over and we shook hands and said hello. I asked him if there was any reason why he wanted me to meet his son, and he said I am a very beautiful girl with nice hair and clothes, and that he wants me to date his son. I kindly said no thank you, I am currently seeing someone at the moment. He kind of looked at me with a weird look of disappointment mixed with rage. He then put his arm around me and pulled out a wad of cash and said, "Come on, let us buy you a drink and talk to us more. You may want to leave that other man." I looked over at my friends and they were waving me over and were like, "WTF?" I said 1 minute and talked to this man a little more. Stupid me, I know, but I was curious at this time. I asked where they were from, and they said Mississauga, and they were wondering if I want to go up to Ottawa and party for the weekend at their mansion. I declined, and he kept pressuring me onto his son. I finally got his arm from around me and walked over to my friends. They took a couple more pictures of me before leaving the bar. I thought that was really weird, like am I being targeted for a kidnapping, or am I being shopped around to being someone's wife or something, maybe a sex slave? I had no idea, but it was too weird for me. Last call hits, and we decide to grab our jackets at the coat check because it could be a very big line. We grab out jackets and wait outside for our taxis to come. Stupid people were jumping and pushing for cabs in front of the bar, so we decided to walk down to the other street and call one from there. We waited a few minutes, and who comes rolling around the corner? Those men in the bar. They have a third car with them. My friend and I, the person I was seeing, and the two men that came with us were all freaked out, and they stood there blocking me from their view. They called me over to their car. I did not go. They got out and were walking towards us, and my friend snapped pictures of them and said she also wrote down their license plates. They called her a whole bunch of hurtful names, got in their cars, and drove off. I didn't go back to the bar for a while, but apparently there was a rumor going around to be careful because there are men trying to lure girls into the city with them. I don't know what they wanted from me. I don't know what they are doing with the pictures. I SDLL don't know what to think of it. Look, I'm not saying I believe in ghosts. I don't even believe in astrology, and that's like 90% of my Tinder matches' personalities. But after what happened last weekend, I might have to reconsider, at least the ghost part. So last Friday, my friends and I decided to get out of the city for a little mental health weekend. You know, wine, cheese boards, pretending we're rich and sophisticated, standard millennial things. We rented this cute little Airbnb in the middle of nowhere, a big old Victorian house with creaky floors and clawfoot bathtubs. The photos made it look cozy, and the reviews were mostly positive, except for one guy who complained about weird noises. But every Airbnb has that one review, right? I figured it was just Karen energy. I should have paid attention. The place was fine during the day. Quaint, even. We spent the afternoon drinking too much rose and taking Instagram photos of the house's weird antique furniture. There was a rocking chair in the corner of the living room that looked like it had seen some shit. But hey, it added to the vibe. Things didn't get weird until later that night. It started around 11 p.m., when we were all in the living room playing some dumb card game. I think it was Cards Against Humanity, which feels a little ironic now, given what happened. Anyway, we were mid-round when we heard it, a loud thud from upstairs. We all froze. What was that? Sarah asked, clutching her wine glass like it was a weapon. Probably just the house settling, I said, because that's what people always say in horror movies right before they get murdered. I wasn't exactly convincing, though, because I was already mentally mapping out which friend I could trip if we needed to make a run for it. Sorry, Sarah. Or maybe it's a ghost, Taylor said, grinning like an idiot. Taylor is that friend who's always trying to summon spirits with a Ouija board at parties. She lives for this stuff. Shut up, Taylor, I said. You're not helping. We tried to laugh it off and keep playing, but then we heard it again, another thud, louder this time. And then footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, coming from the upstairs hallway. Now at this point, any sane person would have left. But apparently we're not sane. Instead, we decided to investigate. Because that's what you do when you're drunk and stupid, and have watched exactly 0 documentaries about people who get murdered in the woods. We crept upstairs, armed with the most intimidating weapons we could find. A fireplace poker, a wine bottle, and for some reason, a throw pillow. That was Sarah's idea. I don't know what she thought she was going to do with it. Smother the ghost? The hallway was dark, but the footsteps had stopped. We checked all the bedrooms, one by one, but they were empty. No sign of an intruder, no sign of anything weird. By the time we got to the last room, we were starting to feel a little silly. See? Nothing, I said, pushing open the door. And that's when the rocking chair started moving. It was just sitting there in the corner, rocking back and forth like someone was sitting in it. Except no one was. We all just stood there, staring at it, until Taylor finally broke the silence. Okay, not to be dramatic, she said, but I think the ghost likes my vibe. Taylor, shut up. I hissed, yanking her back into the hallway. At this point, we were all freaking out. Sarah was halfway to tears, and even Taylor looked a little less smug. I decided we needed to get out of the house and regroup, so we bolted downstairs and out onto the front porch. That's when Sarah realized she'd left her phone inside. Leave it, I said. You can buy a new one. It's an iPhone 14, she wailed, like that was a good enough reason to risk her life. Before I could stop her, she ran back inside. The rest of us stood there on the porch, arguing about whether we should go after her or just call 911. For the record, I voted for the latter. Sorry, Sarah. But then a minute later, she came back out, holding her phone and looking totally fine. I got it, she said, panting. But there's something you should probably see. We followed her back inside, because apparently none of us value our lives, and she led us to the kitchen. And there, on the counter, was a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread that hadn't been there before. Next to it was an open jar of peanut butter and a butter knife. And sitting on a plate was a perfectly made peanut butter sandwich. "What the hell?" Taylor whispered. "Okay, so maybe it's a nice ghost," Sarah said. "Like, maybe it just wanted a snack." I stared at her. "Sarah, ghosts don't make sandwiches." "Well, maybe they do," she shot back. "You don't know their lives." At this point, I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or burn the house down. But before we could debate the sandwich situation any further, the lights flickered, and we heard that thudding noise again, this time from the kitchen ceiling, directly above us. We all screamed. I'm not proud of it, but it happened. "Okay, yeah, no," I said, grabbing my keys. "We're leaving." We ran out of the house, piled into my car, and drove to the nearest motel, where we spent the night drinking minibar vodka and trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. None of us slept. The next morning, I called the Airbnb host to tell them what had happened. They were surprisingly chill about it. "Oh yeah, that's just Walter," the host said. "He's harmless." "Walter?" I repeated, thinking maybe I'd misheard. "The ghost," they explained. "The house is haunted, but it's nothing to worry about. Walter just likes to mess with people sometimes." "Did he make you a sandwich?" "He does that when he likes you." On CL they have that strictly platonic section, and I was looking to make some friends. This girl replied to a post I made, and it turned out we lived in the same neighborhood and had stuff in common. I don't know why, but I invited her over to hang out and smoke. She comes over and looks pretty cool, lots of tattoos, clothes from Urban Outfitters, until I notice when she sits on my couch that she's got fresh, semi-bleeding cuts on her thighs. I ignore it, and we start talking. Her phone is constantly getting texts, and she's answering them every time. This is important. So we talk, and story one, she tells me she's in a long-distance relationship. Her BF has schizoaffective disorder, a mix of schizophrenia and bipolar, and has gone off his meds. He has been threatening her all day. Oh, and BTW, she also suffers from schizoaffective disorder, but don't worry, she takes her meds. Story 2, we start talking about my studies. I'm in women's studies. And when reproductive stuff comes up, she stops me and says this stuff is a trigger as she was raped last year and isn't dealing with it very well. "This is why I cut," she says as she points to the fresh cuts on her thighs. Story 3, she was homeless, living in LA, and got into a van when the guy locked her and a friend in and tried to rape them. I pulled a knife on that motherfucker and would have killed him, but he let us out eventually. She then orders food and offers to smoke me up. As an added bonus, she wants to sprinkle Klonopin on top. I decline and we smoke my nice, clean kush. I get up to go to the bathroom and she says, giggling, "Wouldn't it be funny if when you came out all your stuff was gone? BC, I stole it." I held it. Then her phone rings. She starts yelling at the person on the phone. She hangs up and apologizes, explaining her mom is coming to get her. BC, she just got released from the mental ward 2 days ago and is on suicide watch. She has curfew. She thanks me and leaves. This all happened within an hour and a half. Best story I have. Lady was crazy. I've got a good one. It was my first ever Tinder experience about 6 years ago. Matched with a decent looking lady, made a reservation at a restaurant and met her there. She looked nothing like her photo. I figured I'd just be polite and enjoy a nice dinner anyway. Our conversation soon flows into why we ended up on Tinder. She says she had a recent bad breakup because her boyfriend's girlfriend told her that her boyfriend was actually married. Read that again, there's no typo. She was dating someone who had a girlfriend and a wife. She then told me she had no idea because the guy looked a lot younger than what he actually was. I asked how old the guy was and she said 50. I asked if she had a pic of him and she showed me a pic of a 60-year-old guy. Again, no typo. I had had enough of the drama and I told her I appreciated the date, but we weren't going to meet again. I'd rather be upfront about it than ghost someone. I said I'm heading home, paid the bill, and headed for my grab pickup point. As I was waiting for the grab, I realized she was still standing next to me. She said, "So where am I going?" I replied with, "I'm going to my home, and you're going to your home," while literally signaling with my 2 hands going further apart. I then headed home. The next day, ding dong, my doorbell rang. I wonder what's happening, check my video feed, and it's the same girl. She found out where I live. I use my home as my office address, which was listed on my website. She's literally shouting at me through the video feed, asking why I didn't text her again. I reminded her not so politely that I stated clearly we weren't seeing each other again. She starts crying, I turn off the video feed and never hear from her again. Anyway, 2 months later I ended up meeting my wife on Tinder, and we've been married ever since, so it's been great. I'm one of those people that's had the misfortune to have a few creepy encounters in my life. I've been fortunate enough to come away unscathed from each of them. So there's that. I decided to make this the primary and first post I've ever made because I think this was as close to being hurt as I'd ever been, and I am eternally grateful that it turned out okay. This was a few years ago when I was an undergrad, and I lived in an apartment just a few blocks from university. A trolley would come round to pick up students from our apartment complex. I first noticed him at my stop. I had never noticed him before, but I noticed that he was very attractive, sort of rocker style with tattoos and shoulder-length hair. I didn't think much more of it, just boarded the trolley, and put in my earbuds listening to music as I drifted off into thoughts about class. I was staring out the window, but when I turned my head back, I saw him sitting across from me, and he was looking at me with a smile. I politely smiled back and quickly looked back out the window. He was very attractive, and I got bashful. I kept my eyes out the window the rest of the ride, which wasn't very far. The way he had looked at me just gave me butterflies. I got up to get off at my stop, and he got up as well. I started walking to class, but he walked right up next to me and tapped me on the shoulder. I sort of jumped, turned, and he was smiling. I could see his lips moving. I took my earbuds out. "I'm sorry, my music." He just grinned. In a thick French accent, he said, "Hello. I saw you on the trolley. I find you exceptionally beautiful." My cheeks caught fire as I stuttered out a thank you. He told me he would like to take me on a date. I agreed, and we decided on drinks that next night downtown, which was walking distance from my apartment. He asked for my phone number, which I gave to him. He texted me only a couple hours later telling me he was thinking of how beautiful I was and couldn't stop thinking about me. He said this in various ways a few times the rest of the day. I found it flattering, but it was a little intense looking back. I dunno, I just assumed it was his culture. Either way, I didn't find it that weird. At 3 a.m. he texted again, "Can't wait for our date." I did find this a little weird being 3 in the morning, but again gave him the benefit of the doubt. I didn't have school or work the next day, so I got up early to take a morning run down by the river. I should mention here that I lived right near the trolley stop, I mean literally 50 feet from it, in a ground floor apartment. My patio door opened right out onto the lawn, and where the river runs, so as I stepped out I could see the trolley stop just diagonal to me. Before you think I'm too much of an idiot, I had requested a second or third level apartment being that I lived alone as a female, but they did not have any available, and I was on a waiting list for the first one. Anyway, as I stepped out I saw him and a couple other people standing at the trolley stop. He also saw me and I waved back at him. He waved me over. As I walked up, he said something a little weird, "Now I know where my muse lives." I just smiled awkwardly. He then offered to walk by and pick me up for our date, since he lived in the apartment complex. I agreed. I told him I was headed off for a run, said goodbye. I was still not getting any real weird vibes at this point. He watched me run off. That night I got the knock on my door. I opened the door, and he immediately tried to push his way in, but I just stepped out on the porch before he could get through. He gave me a weird look, but then smiled and pecked my cheeks. I immediately noticed liquor on his breath, but brushed it off thinking he might have been nervous. We walked the short distance into town, and he asked what I was majoring in. I thought I heard him scoff when I answered biology, but when I looked at him, he was smiling. At the wine bar, he ordered for us, which I didn't mind, him being most likely better versed in the subject. He started asking me a lot of questions, but would interrupt as I answered, which again I just found slightly rude and chalked it up to cultural differences. Looking back now, I think he was probably tipsy. I found out that he wrote for the arts and culture section of the local newspaper. I recognized his name. He was a writer and attending university for a master's degree in journalism. We had some of this in common. I am also a writer, mostly poetry and short stories, but I was also an intern writer for the arts section of the university paper. As the date went on, I noticed a lot of strange behavior. For one, he gulped his wine rather than sipped. He would have about 3 glasses to my 1. This was a red flag. As I said, he was already drinking when he arrived, so I immediately noticed that there could be an alcohol abuse problem here, which I'm fairly sensitive to since both of my parents are recovering alcoholics. I don't want none of that, So despite how attractive I found him, and how serendipitous our commonalities, I was really starting to get turned off. Also, he kept checking his text messages almost every 2 minutes, which I found extremely rude. About 45 minutes into the date, his tone changed a bit too, and he started, sort of mocking me and the major that I had chose, saying things like, "Why would an artist like you go into something as mundane as biology?" Which isn't the degree I ended up getting anyway, but I digress. This wasn't said at all in, like, a flattering tone. It was very scoffing and mocking. I was pretty much over the date at this point, but not totally ready to throw in the towel, figuring it might just be the subjects we were on, and please don't judge me, but he was so hot. Uneasy face. When I was about 11, I had a steady babysitter named Jane. My brother and sister were 17 and 18, so they were either too cool to babysit me or busy with school around this time. Jane was their age, but I don't think her family had a lot of money, so she would babysit me almost every weekend instead of doing normal teenager stuff. My family lived in a pretty well-to-do cul-de-sac in the back of a large neighborhood. It was one of those neighborhoods where the houses got nicer the further back you went. The houses at the front, by the main road, were not as nice but still not terrible or anything. This is where Jane lived. Since I was 11 and prepubescent, I was a huge pain in the ass. But not to Jane. I looked at her as a best friend. We did so many fun things together, and I could truly tell that Jane loved me. One Saturday night, my mom was making plans for the next week. But for the first time, Jane couldn't babysit. She had her first prom. She was very excited because the boy she had had a crush on for years asked her. I knew because she had been telling me about him since she started high school. My mother and I were both very excited for her, and I saw my mom hand her way more money than usual. Jane's eyes teared up, and she gave us both a hug and left. Since this was the mid-90s, everyone got babysitters from word of mouth. My mom heard from another mother that a girl that used to babysit for her kids had just moved back to her parents' house after grad school. She lived down the street from Jane. Her name was Becky, and my mom called her up to see if she could babysit me that Saturday. Becky excitedly said yes and proceeded to ask my mom somewhat strange, but not entirely alarming, questions like how tall I was, what I looked like, etc. There might have been other questions, but I was just hearing my mom's side of the conversation. When she hung up the phone, my mom said to my dad, "Wow, she sure is thorough." I was a little nervous, as Jane had been the only one to babysit me for years. In the rare instances she couldn't do it, my parents usually just canceled their plans. But this was a work party and my dad was being honored, so that wasn't an option. A couple days before Becky was to come, I begged my mom to call Jane. I wanted to see if I could come over the night of prom and see her in her dress. My mom kept telling me she wouldn't want me there, and that I could see pictures, but I insisted. So my mom called Jane and handed the phone to me. "Hey there, May, how are you?" "I'm good. I wanted to see if I could come over on Saturday and see you in your prom dress." "Of course. I am getting my hair done, but you can come after that, maybe around 5:30. Tell your mom to call first and make sure that I am home." "It won't be my mom, it'll be Becky." Dead silence. "Wait, what?" "Since you couldn't watch me, my mom found a girl named Becky to do it." Long pause. "Okay, sweetie. That's fine." She hurriedly got me off the phone. I went to school the next day and came home to my mom hanging up the phone, shaking her head. Poor Jane. Her date doesn't want to take her anymore, they had a fight. She wanted to know if she could still watch you this Saturday. I feel bad canceling on Becky, but it's completely up to you. Of course, I chose Jane. And as usual, we had tons of fun. I didn't bring up the prom because I didn't want to make her sad. But then she asked me if I wanted to play dress up. We did each other's hair and put on my mom's dresses and took pictures with my mother's Polaroid. It was the best night of an 11-year-old's life. Jane went to community college, and by the time she went to a 4-year school, I no longer needed a babysitter. We kept in touch a little after that, but before long we both got busy and we lost touch. This was where the story ended, until this past weekend. I ran into Jane at a bar. She was not sober. In fact, she was very drunk. She didn't seem to be doing well. She was very thin, and it looked like she had track marks on her arms. This made me extremely sad because she was one of the people I loved most in the world, at least at one time. I sat next to her at the bar and asked how she was doing. Her face lit up, and she gave me a big hug. "I always knew you would do well for yourself. Look at you. You're all grown up and beautiful. You look great too, Jane." "No, I don't, but it's okay." We started talking, and she was drinking even more. I got the feeling that she was in blackout territory. She was with a group of people that seemed to be her friends, so I wasn't entirely worried for her, but I still didn't want to leave her for some reason. She seemed really happy to see me. We started reminiscing, and once it was my turn to bring up a story again, I said, "Remember when that dirtbag stood you up for prom, so we staged our own prom with pictures and everything? That was great." She looked at me through foggy eyes and smiled a small smile. He didn't stand me up. The replacement babysitter was a sick fuck. When I was little, she beat me, sexually abused me, threatened me, and locked me in closets. Then she would invite her boyfriend over to do the same things to me. She told me if I ever told anyone, she would kill my family, and I would have to live in an orphanage. She took pictures of me too. I had repressed it until you said her name that day. Now it's all back. All of it. I should have told someone, but it's too late now. I just didn't want people to know what had happened to me. I thought they would look at me differently. I regret so much. Who knows what else she did? She set down her drink and gave me a hug and a good to see you, like she hadn't just dropped a major bomb on me. She stumbled out with her boyfriend. Everything came flooding back to me. The phone conversation with Becky with all the details. Jane's silence when I said Becky's name. How Jane stayed with me every single weekend until I was old enough to not need a babysitter. Some people might say Jane should have told someone, but she was just a kid. But she was an extraordinary kid. She gave up her prom to save me. She gave up every single weekend after that, so that nothing would ever happen to me. She was my guardian angel. Unfortunately, Jane didn't have her own Jane, and it makes me feel horrible. I met Theo between the collards and the compost. Our community garden does an open volunteer night, and he showed up in a faded LSU shirt, hands soft but willing. I was thinning carrots with the grim satisfaction of a skeptic who trusts what grows from dirt more than what comes from people. He asked questions, the good kind, not the performative kind, and when he admitted he cooked his way through breakups, I believed him. He believed me when I said sesame could put me in an ambulance. Menus first, surprises second, I said. He nodded like it was a vow. The pop-up supper club looked like Instagram-learned carpentry. A drafty warehouse softened with jars of candles and gauzy banners. A string quartet looping lo-fi beats like someone had convinced them irony paid. Communal tables forced friendliness. Name cards were brush-lettered in ink the color of old wine. Mine read Zara. Nothing else, but the curl on the Z matched the way my mother writes it on every birthday card. An extra loop that looks like a wave. Coincidence, I told myself. A trendy font. Theo squeezed my knee under the table, tender and unconscious, and I tried to let the gentleness be louder than the drafts. Course 1, wild seed medley. The chef announced from the open kitchen. Apron, man bun, 3-day beard that probably had a publicist. A server set down 2 bowls of something fragrant and freckled. Seeds glistened in oil, dotted with microgreens that resembled a promise more than a vegetable. I raised my hand. Does this contain sesame? My voice was professional steel. I'm allergic. The chef smiled the way men smile when they have already decided the story. Only wild seeds, he said, airy. No worries. Can you confirm the oil? I pressed. It's always the oil that gets you. Canola, he said quickly, already turning to flirt direct a table of influencers. Theo, eager to prove we weren't the fussy couple, lifted his spoon and tasted my portion. I'll test it, he said, boy heroic, and then realized exactly what he had done as every muscle in my face folded into thunder. You just ate my plate, I said level. His eyes went doe-wide. I was hungry, he blurted, cheeks coloring. He tried to push his bowl toward me like a child sliding the last cookie back on the tray. Take mine. That isn't how allergens work, I said. The couple beside us, coiffed and close enough to eavesdrop with no shame, cooed. So brave about her allergy, the woman whispered, and the man added, she'll be fine, canola is safe, in the exact cadence I'd used in my head years ago when I still wanted to believe kitchens told the truth. Candle gutters. The place cards murmur against the wood as if the table's breathing moves them. When I glance back, Theo's card has hopped closer to mine. Cute, he says, and then knocks his water with his elbow in a clumsy attempt to clean up the earlier sin. It cascades across the ink and into a neighbor's lap. A small chorus of rises and falls like a wave. Theo grabs napkins. They disintegrate under his hands like pulp snow. I feel embarrassment start in my toes and climb. Overhead, a projector throws a series of local family slides onto a concrete wall. Polaroid scans of laughing kids, soft-focus backyard parties. It clicks to a photo of a little girl with uneven bangs in a sky blue dress with a crooked sash and a daisy applique my aunt sewed in one night. My breath stops on the daisy. 7-year-old me stares into my present with absolute knowledge that I hated that dress. Theo notices last, turning when my fingers go still on his knee. "Is that?" he starts. "Yes," I say. The string quartet hits a wrong note and loops it, wrong over wrong, like a joke with a limp. Course 2 arrives, art on ceramic. A few stray herb leaves on my plate slide into a clean Z. The brush letter aesthetic again, my brain insists, hunting for scents. I move the leaves with my fork. They slide back when I look away. The couple beside us parrots a story I haven't told. My aunt made a dress once, and it was charming. My hand goes cold. Theo tries to earn redemption with helpfulness and keeps missing, standing to get the server's attention, dragging the shared tablecloth an inch, almost toppling the centerpiece. "Stop," I whisper. He freezes like I've put him in a museum. The chalk wall behind the bar invites diners to scrawl their names. It fills fast, looped signatures, hearts, dates. Between courses I go to write mine, because I want control over at least one word tonight. Before my chalk touches concrete, a name blooms in neat loops. Zara Aiden, the whole of me, written the exact way my mother writes it on official forms when she's being formal to show she's not afraid. The chalk sits warm in my fingers. "Did you?" Theo asks, arriving with plates he shouldn't have been carrying. "No," I say, and hear how thin the air has become. I try again with the chef, this time with my phone camera held like a badge. "Oil," I say. "Confirm it." "Canola," he repeats, testy now. "We're very careful." The projector throws my 7-year-old face onto his shoulder like a small, disapproving ghost. Course 3 is something with petals. The couple beside us repeats lines of mine I only think. "Menus first," the woman says, and the man adds, surprises second, and they toast as if they've invented my mantra. I feel flayed. Theo hears it too. He finally puts down his savior cape. He turns, knees bumping mine, and lowers his voice to something that belongs only to us. "Can we step out?" he asks. "You don't have to prove anything in here." "Not without the truth," I say. I dial the number on the bottom of the menu. "Questions?" Text the chef, and hear the buzz from his back pocket on the other side of the room. "Oil," I text. "Last time, is it sesame?" We watch him pull the phone, watch the conflict pass from his mouth to his eyes. He looks at the bowl on the pass, looks at the bottle beside the stove, looks at me. "Yes. Toasted sesame in the garnish." "Very small amount," the reply pings. My laugh is pure steel. I walk to the pass, show him his words, and say calm as a scalpel. "You say canola. You serve sesame. You never get to do that." He stammers, starts to talk about foraged, about authenticity. I slide my phone into my pocket and turn before rage makes me theatrical. Theo is already standing, already tracing the route to the door with his eyes like a mapmaker who has learned the shape of a wound. "We're done," he says to the room at large, which continues pretending to be a dream sequence. Outside, the air is cold and unflavored. He stops under a street lamp and faces me like a student who needs the right answer to pass. "I'm sorry I ate your plate," he says, and there's no joke in it. "I'm sorry I didn't back your question. I wanted to be helpful. I ended up being noise." "Yes," I say, because the truth is a relief when it doesn't have to perform. "And you don't have to be helpful to be on my side." He nods. "I'm on your side." He pulls a tiny jar of lavender honey from the pop-up's merch table, which I hadn't noticed him buy. "For a better scene later," he says, "NSFW, YouTube permissible, a promise with training wheels." We walk until the warehouse shrinks, until the string quartet's lo-fi loop is only a rumor. We find a curb and a paper boat of fries and ketchup in packets with tiny veins of air. We read each other poems from our phones. Worcestershire for me, something spare and Midwestern for him, and let the grease bless our fingers. I matched with Curtis over a dumb meme about elevators, 2 buttons, both taped with out of order, and the caption, "Choose your fighter." I liked that he replied with, "Stairs are the underrated rom-com lead." I'm Anna, born in Sao Paulo, producer of other people's adrenaline. He's Curtis from Detroit, practical romantic, allegedly working on his height phobia. The rooftop bar sat 27 floors up, and the elevator hiccuped on the way, stalled between 18 and 19 long enough for the lights to do a tiny seizure. He cracked a joke about bonus floor, but his knuckles stayed pale on the rail. The roof glittered, glass windscreens, potted palms, a line of tables posing for sunset. Wind stole napkins and a little dignity. We ordered oysters and something citrusy. You know the myth, I teased, tapping the shell. He smiled, brave and shaky, then gripped the table like it might try to leave. The first disaster started as a toast. Curtis stood to clink glasses and prove he was fine. The wind shoved. His knee bumped the table. A full water carafe rushed toward me like a tiny glacier. I dodged. The deluge found the neighboring influencer's sequins. I am so sorry, he stammered, fumbling napkins, which the wind immediately redistributed across the skyline. The influencer hissed. I reached for his sleeve. His arm vibrated like a plucked string. Far away, a glass shattered. A single office tower blinked its lights in slow Morse. SDAY, my brain translated, unhelpfully. Curtis's phone compass spun like a kid on a swivel chair. He checked the bar's QR menu for distraction. It flashed a regulars column with his name in it. He swallowed. I've never been here, he whispered, as if the building could hear. Oysters arrived, piled on ice like small moons. He took one, hands finally steady, and said, "To facing things." He leaned too far, trying to show me the view past the windscreen, and tapped the tempered glass. A security alarm chirped once, sharp as a bird. Every head turned. A server hustled over with diplomatic eyebrows. We're good, I said, smiling my producer's smile. Curtis sat abruptly, legs wobbling, and his knee knocked mine hard enough to rattle the plate. An oyster jumped ship, skidding into my lap. Cold brine found the exact path only liquid and fate can find. I hissed. He went scarlet. I should get more napkins, he announced, and then his chair snagged the tablecloth and yanked it a heroic inch. Miraculously, nothing else fell. The influencer gave him the kind of glare you can feel on your scalp. In a window across the way, two silhouettes mimicked us a beat late. One standing, one reaching, choreographed déjà vu. I waved experimentally. Only one double waved back. The elevator display near the bar read 33, though our button panel down in the lobby had insisted 27 was the top. The palms leaned toward us as if listening. Fresh air? I suggested. We have air, he said, and heard himself. Yes. Stairs. His voice was too loud. A couple glanced over. He stood, forgot the step behind him, windmilled, and grabbed the nearest thing, me. His hand caught the thin strap of my dress. It held like a hero for a count of one, and then surrendered with a tragic little sound. Wardrobe malfunction hovered at the door, cleared its throat, and decided to stay outside for now. His eyes went huge. I didn't, oh my God. He shrugged off his jacket so fast he almost flung it off the roof and draped it over my shoulders like a penitent magician. I burst out laughing because the only other option was fire. We made for the stairwell. He pushed the door with unnecessary drama. It thunked open onto blessed, boring concrete. On the 12th floor landing, the air calmed. His hands shook. When I was 6, he said, staring at nothing, I fell off a ladder trying to impress my cousin. Scab from ankle to hip. My dad said, bravery isn't borrowed from a height. And I keep trying to borrow it anyway. I told him the truth I usually slap a joke over. I make jokes so I don't feel like a coward when I'm scared. He nodded, grateful for the confession. Somewhere above us, the bar's music muffled itself into a pulse that could have been a heartbeat or an apology. Mezzanine? I said. Ground-adjacent victories? He smiled like a boy who's just learned the rules and likes them. On the mezzanine lounge, we ordered sliders and gave the night new metrics. Distance to the exit, number of intact glasses, volume of our own voices. He texted the influencer a gift card through the restaurant app with a note that said, I was the human storm. I am sorry. I squeezed his knee under the table in the sanctioned way. Light NSFW for the gods of algorithm. We split one oyster here, at a sane height, for science and a tradition I didn't want to abandon to a bad moment. Saving the rest, I said, for a braver day. Your call. He exhaled into the jacket still around me. On the way out, we passed the lobby display. It flickered from 27 to 33 to a blank screen. The palms in the entry didn't lean. Outside, the building returned to being a building. Curtis held the door for me without trying to hold me together, and that felt like evidence of learning. At the corner we looked up once, together, and then didn't again. He said, next week, floor 8. I said, we can pretend the elevator is an elevator and not a test. We grinned, inventorying the small, unfancy bravery of choosing the next step instead of the top. I met Theo between the collards and the compost. Our community garden does an open volunteer night, and he showed up in a faded LSU shirt, hands soft but willing. I was thinning carrots with the grim satisfaction of a skeptic who trusts what grows from dirt more than what comes from people. He asked questions, the good kind, not the performative kind, and when he admitted he cooked his way through breakups, I believed him. He believed me when I said sesame could put me in an ambulance. Menus first, surprises second, I said. He nodded like it was a vow. The pop-up supper club looked like Instagram-learned carpentry. A drafty warehouse softened with jars of candles and gauzy banners. A string quartet looping lo-fi beats like someone had convinced them irony paid. Communal tables, forced friendliness. Name cards were brush-lettered in ink the color of old wine. Mine read Zara. Nothing else, but the curl on the Z matched the way my mother writes it on every birthday card. An extra loop that looks like a wave. Coincidence, I told myself. A trendy font. Theo squeezed my knee under the table, tender and unconscious, and I tried to let the gentleness be louder than the drafts. Course 1, Wild Seed Medley. The chef announced from the open kitchen. Apron, man bun, 3-day beard that probably had a publicist. A server set down 2 bowls of something fragrant and freckled. Seeds glistened in oil, dotted with microgreens that resembled a promise more than a vegetable. I raised my hand. Does this contain sesame? My voice was professional steel. I'm allergic. The chef smiled the way men smile when they have already decided the story. Only wild seeds, he said, airy. No worries. Can you confirm the oil? I pressed. It's always the oil that gets you. Canola, he said quickly, already turning to flirt direct a table of influencers. Theo, eager to prove we weren't the fussy couple, lifted his spoon and tasted my portion. I'll test it, he said, boy heroic, and then realized exactly what he had done as every muscle in my face folded into thunder. You just ate my plate, I said level. His eyes went doe-wide. I was hungry, he blurted, cheeks coloring. He tried to push his bowl toward me like a child sliding the last cookie back on the tray. Take mine. That isn't how allergens work, I said. The couple beside us, coiffed and close enough to eavesdrop with no shame, cooed. So brave about her allergy, the woman whispered, and the man added, she'll be fine, canola is safe, in the exact cadence I'd used in my head years ago when I still wanted to believe kitchens told the truth. Candle gutters. The place cards murmur against the wood as if the table's breathing moves them. When I glance back, Theo's card has hopped closer to mine. Cute, he says, and then knocks his water with his elbow in a clumsy attempt to clean up the earlier sin. It cascades across the ink and into a neighbor's lap. A small chorus of rises and falls like a wave. Theo grabs napkins. They disintegrate under his hands like pulp snow. I feel embarrassment start in my toes and climb. Overhead, a projector throws a series of local family slides onto a concrete wall. Polaroid scans of laughing kids, soft-focus backyard parties. It clicks to a photo of a little girl with uneven bangs in a sky-blue dress with a crooked sash and a daisy applique my aunt sewed in one night. My breath stops on the daisy. 7-year-old me stares into my present with absolute knowledge that I hated that dress. Theo notices last, turning when my fingers go still on his knee. Is that? He starts. Yes, I say. The string quartet hits a wrong note and loops it, wrong over wrong, like a joke with a limp. Course 2 arrives, art on ceramic. A few stray herb leaves on my plate slide into a clean Z. The brush letter aesthetic again, my brain insists, hunting for sense. I move the leaves with my fork. They slide back when I look away. The couple beside us parrots a story I haven't told. My aunt made a dress once, and it was charming. My hand goes cold. Theo tries to earn redemption with helpfulness and keeps missing, standing to get the server's attention, dragging the shared tablecloth an inch, almost toppling the centerpiece. Stop, I whisper. He freezes like I've put him in a museum. The chalk wall behind the bar invites diners to scrawl their names. It fills fast, looped signatures, hearts, dates. Between courses I go to write mine, because I want control over at least one word tonight. Before my chalk touches concrete, a name blooms in neat loops. Zara Aiden, the whole of me, written the exact way my mother writes it on official forms when she's being formal to show she's not afraid. The chalk sits warm in my fingers. Did you? Theo asks, arriving with plates he shouldn't have been carrying. No, I say, and hear how thin the air has become. I try again with the chef, this time with my phone camera held like a badge. Oil, I say. Confirm it. Canola, he repeats, testy now. We're very careful. The projector throws my 7-year-old face onto his shoulder like a small, disapproving ghost. Course 3 is something with petals. The couple beside us repeats lines of mine I only think. Menus first, the woman says, and the man adds, surprises second, and they toast as if they've invented my mantra. I feel flayed. Theo hears it too. He finally puts down his savior cape. He turns, knees bumping mine, and lowers his voice to something that belongs only to us. Can we step out? He asks. You don't have to prove anything in here. Not without the truth, I say. I dial the number on the bottom of the menu. Questions? Text the chef, and hear the buzz from his back pocket on the other side of the room. Oil, I text. Last time, is it sesame? We watch him pull the phone, watch the conflict pass from his mouth to his eyes. He looks at the bowl on the pass, looks at the bottle beside the stove, looks at me. Yes. Toasted sesame in the garnish. Very small amount, the reply pings. My laugh is pure steel. I walk to the pass, show him his words, and say calm as a scalpel. You say canola. You serve sesame. You never get to do that. He stammers, starts to talk about foraged, about authenticity. I slide my phone into my pocket, and turn before rage makes me theatrical. Theo is already standing, already tracing the route to the door with his eyes like a mapmaker who has learned the shape of a wound. We're done, he says to the room at large, which continues pretending to be a dream sequence. Outside, the air is cold and unflavored. He stops under a street lamp and faces me like a student who needs the right answer to pass. I'm sorry I ate your plate, he says, and there's no joke in it. I'm sorry I didn't back your question. I wanted to be helpful. I ended up being noise. Yes, I say, because the truth is a relief when it doesn't have to perform. And you don't have to be helpful to be on my side. He nods. I'm on your side. He pulls a tiny jar of lavender honey from the pop-up's merch table, which I hadn't noticed him buy. For a better scene later, he says, NSFW, you too permissible, a promise with training wheels. We match on Hinge arguing about Scoville units like other people argue about movies. I'm Alicia, Phoenix-born, competitive EMT who thinks heat is a sport and a coping mechanism. He's Roman, Krakow-born, a stoic photographer with shoulders that say nothing rattles me. He messages, Reaper is overhyped, technique beats tolerance. I write back, meet me at the wing gauntlet and bring your dignity. He sends a thumbs up and a flame. 2 flames. Red flag or foreshadowing, I choose flirting. The bar is a fluorescent terrarium, roaring crowd, sticky tables, a DJ folding bass into the floorboards. Along one wall, Polaroids of past victors are stapled like hunting trophies, open mouths, glazed eyes, triumphant thumbs. A foam mascot head, a goofy pepper with devil horns, hangs over the stage, lit from within by a flickering sign that sputters between on and a pulse. We slide onto stools up front. The MC counts down, cameras hoisted on boom arms. A bartender drops 2 pints of milk with a wink that lingers too long on me. I shrug it off. Roman rolls his neck like a boxer. I should have clocked it then, the way men prepare to prove something no one asked them to. Wings arrive in ascending evil, jalapeno, habanero, ghost, scorpion, reaper. Roman keeps pace, face unreadable, every bite a photo pose. I match him, because that's who I am when someone sets a ladder beside me. The crowd chants numbers, mouths shine. People pound the table as if applause could circulate air. By Reaper number 4, my lips buzz like beehives. Roman wipes his mouth, turns his head to the nearest camera, and raises my hand like a referee. The cable snags his wrist, the milk glass tips, a cold white wave sheets across the table and into my lap. The crowd howls. Roman's face flushes beet red. He starts, grabs for napkins, grabs the stack too hard, and fans them into the air like confetti. I start laughing because it's that or murder. He grins in relief, misreading, and leans across the table to kiss me, showman's timing. The kiss detonates. Capsaicin blooms like a grenade. I hiccup milk back across his cheek. The crowd tips into hysteria. Look, he says, trying to turn it into a bit, and in trying makes it worse. The MC yells, we got a milk geyser, and somewhere deep in the bass, the mascot sign flickers in a tight rhythm that matches my traitor hiccups exactly. On on off, like it's laughing with my diaphragm. We bail to the alley, gulp January air that tastes like unflavored mercy. Roman aims humor at the wreck. We've invented a new cocktail. The Phoenix Geyser. My hands shake. I've coded nights by heat. The simple pain you can measure and ride until the hard parts of shift work, of sirens and late apologies settle. I tell him that, the outline at least. He nods, solemn, gentler without the stage. Finish, he asks. Respectfully is the word he adds. I should say no. We go back in. The bass is thicker, slower, a heartbeat wearing subwoofers. Roman pulls out his camera, because that's what he does when he can't name the feeling. He shoots candids of me breathing in 4, out 6. In each preview on the screen there's a blurry extra behind me, face melted into neon, head cocked like it's listening. He frowns, scrolls, shoots again. The extra persists. He shows me. The back of my neck turns cold. The kitchen door thumps once, hard enough to vibrate the metal. The foam mascot sign above the stage coughs light in the exact pattern of my hiccups, though I've stopped hiccuping. I stare at the board listing past legends. The top name is written in chalk, underlined twice. As I walk past to the bar for more napkins, the letters smear into a red drag as if a finger, wet with something darker than chalk, ran through them. Hey, we're cool, right? Roman says to the bartender, a man with the kind of mustache that requires discipline. Roman tries to redeem the moment by ordering water, knocks the stack of plastic cups, sends them cascading like tiny cymbals. The bartender sighs and sets down another pint of milk. On the house, he says, eyes on me in a way I've catalogued before. Milk coffin, he adds, and winks too slowly. Roman stiffens, possessive heat rising where the hot sauce can't reach. We're fine, I tell the bartender. Roman hears something in my tone and turns the embarrassment into action. He tips the milk toward his mouth in a performative swig. The lip of the glass glances the mic stand. Feedback shrieks. The room flinches. We reset at the table. Respect, not prize. Roman's hands shake now, and the bravado cracks. He rubs his eye without thinking. Reaper fingers meet cornea. Pain lights him. He shoots to his feet, chair skitters, and he careens into the server with the tray of number 5s. Wings cascade in slow, greasy confetti. The MC's turns into a sucked-in O. Roman staggers to the bar sink and dunks his face under the soda gun. He emerges, dripping, and tries to laugh, tries to be the stoic who can take it. The crowd has turned. The line between he's funny and he's flailing is razor thin. I put my hand on his back, compass steady, and say, "It's okay to stop." "I can," he starts, and his voice betrays him. The bass cuts to silence between tracks. His strangled sound hangs naked in the gap, the entire bar hearing the moment the showman's armor drops. He swallows hard. "Okay," he whispers, to me this time, not to the cameras. We sit. We breathe. The DJ restarts the heartbeat. We try again. He takes a small, respectful bite. I do too. He wipes my brow with a bar napkin printed with cartoon skulls. The ink bleeds under the sweat onto his palm in a jagged grin. He stares. "It's just ink," I say. He nods. The skull widens on his skin like it enjoyed the attention. Roman, chastened, aims his camera away from me, toward the wall of Polaroids. He lifts, shoots. In the playback, the blurry extra stands behind our own just-tacked photo. Someone has already stapled us up, head tilted, a smudge at the mouth like static. "Do you see?" he begins. I touch the camera, lower it. "Some nights want a story so badly they'll make one," I say. The kitchen door thumps again, softer, like it's laughing now that it's winning. "Last round," the MC booms. We decline. He makes a show of nodding gravely, as if we've chosen honor over spectacle. Maybe we have. On our way out, we pass the Legends board. The top name has bled so much the letters are a bruise. Outside, the alley has reclaimed its ordinary chill. My lips have come back to me. Roman's eyes are red-rimmed. The stoic veneer cracked enough I can see the person, which is better anyway. "I tried to be bulletproof," he says. "I became a mess. You knocked milk on my lap, kissed me into a sprinkler, almost blinded yourself, and invented a new genre of feedback." I list, and he winces. Then I add, "And you listened when I said stop." His shoulders drop, heat leaving like steam from an open oven. We walk to a bodega lit like confession. He buys aloe, hands shaking less now, and presses the bottle into my palm like a token handed from player to player. We talk next date like a life raft, ice cream flights, a ban on performance, an absolute rule that nothing capsaicin adjacent goes near anyone's delicate skin. "Condoms in the freezer," he jokes, weak but game. "In a different building," I say, and finally properly laugh. I'm Harper, practical mischief maker from New Orleans who buys good lingerie for myself, not for the audience. Samir is a dreamy urban planner from Leeds who talks about shade canopies and desire lines like they're poetry. We reconnected when our dogs, my barrel-chested mutt Moxie, His skittish whippet, Biscuit, tangled leashes outside a cafe and braided us into a second chance. We agreed on a park picnic, wine, brie, and the kind of flirting that doesn't need a reservation. The live oak we chose wore its age like a crown. Sun made lace of the leaves. Ants paraded in tidy lines like tiny soldiers patrolling our blanket's border. We spread out the brie, strawberries, and a small arrogance about how well this would go. I'd put on a skirt that knew the assignment and under it, a private dare, silk that made me stand taller even if no one else knew why. That tree's branching ratio is perfect, Samir said dreamily. If parks listened to their own shade, they'd design themselves. Speak slower, I teased. Let me fall in love with a ratio. He blushed, pleased, and that was when a frisbee smacked our cheese with a wet, dignified splat. Moxie barked, delighted. The thrower shouted sorry from across the lawn. It happens, I said, lifting the rind with a grimace. A gust came, cheeky as a cousin, and flipped my skirt. Silk flashed sunlight. It was a second, maybe two, but time did that elastic thing humiliation encourages. Samir's eyes went wide, then wider, then pink climbed his neck in increments. You look, he began, and in his fluster he elbowed the rose. The bottle tipped with slow inevitability. Pink flooded the blanket, blooming across the blue like watercolor shame. It's fine, I said, because that's the lie you reach for when you don't want to make someone drown in their apology. He lunged for napkins, tore the whole stack, and started blotting as if the park had graded him on absorbency. A kid watching from the path giggled. A couple on a bench looked over in that way, where they pretend they're not looking. We gathered ourselves and relocated to a drier patch a few yards away, only then noticing the small bronze plaque fixed to the base of the oak, site of the 1879 duel. I laughed too loud. Romance, I said. We've got ghosts and dairy. Clouds kneaded the sky from blue to doe to gray. The park's soundtrack went uncanny. Cicadas stopped mid-chorus as if someone hit pause, then nothing but wind in the live oak and the rasp of a jogger's shoes. The same jogger looped past us again, then again, the exact same pace and ponytail bounce, like a gif of a person. Biscuit stared into the empty shade, ribs quivering, a low growl building like a motor that didn't know how to idle. Moxie's hackles lifted, and for once it wasn't at a squirrel. The rose on the old blanket, our first patch, had darkened, watered blood in the grass. I reached out to fold it and saw, in the bark's whirls, a parade of faces the way you see animals in clouds. Pareidolia, I told myself, until one knot seemed to smirk, a line of wood cutting across where a mouth should be. Okay, Samir said too brightly, we can salvage this. He snatched up the frisbee the kids had abandoned and called, heads, to nobody. He windmilled, trying to be fun, and whizzed through. The disc ricocheted off the oak, pinged the plaque with a nasty ring, and skittered into a chalk drawing at the base. A little girl gasped, her father scowled. I am so sorry, Samir blurted, hands up, and then because embarrassment compounds, he stepped backward into the ants. It was immediate, comedic agony. He hopped, slapping his calves, then tore off his shoes and socks, then, flustered and trying to be brave, his shirt to use as a swatter. Pale, freckled, he swiped at his ankles like a slapstick saint in a silent film. People were definitely looking now. I got it, I said too late. He was already turning a disaster into performance, as if the only way out was through a spotlight. Let me see, I said, and when I crouched, the dogs went still and stared again into the shade, eyes tracking something that wasn't wind. The jogger passed us a fourth time, same cadence, same breath length, ponytail snapping on the same offbeat. The cicadas did not resume. We moved again, this time in the plaque's shadow because moving felt like strategy. I should tell you, I said, the lingerie thing? It was a confidence spell, not an invitation to pants commentary. His ears went pink again. I'm sorry. Sometimes crowds fray me and I talk worse, he admitted. I want to be the man in a plan. I forget plans can be people. We breathed. He exhaled into something less jagged. He pulled a pocket knife to cut the newly unsplat brie and nicked himself, a small insult. A drop landed on the cheese, red on cream, and he cursed under his breath and dabbed it with a napkin already pink from rose. When he looked up, the child artist had drawn two stick figures under a black cloud, one wearing a pink skirt and one holding a disc. Our blanket's colors were exact. That's fast, he said. Kids are fast, I said. My smile was thin. Or the park is rehearsed. He tried to take a selfie to lighten the mood, his instinct when reality is stubborn. In the screen, our faces were half a second out of sync. Our smiles arrived before we made them. Over his shoulder, the chalk drawing on the path had updated. A smear of pink spread under the stick figures like rain. "Harper," he said, my name a question about whether we keep pretending. The dogs answered for us, low growls then a sudden tense silence, as if the air had agreed to hold its breath. "Let's pack," I said. We folded the first blanket, rose and grass and the faint shame of being seen, then lifted the second. In the damp, a shape had bled, the suggestion of a handprint, palm splayed, a finger a little longer than hands allow. My laugh broke and came out wrong. Ha! Ha! I kissed Samir quick, because sometimes you throw a bright thing at a dark thing and hope the physics check out. "For walls," I said. "Lock. Curtains." He nodded, fumbling the corners of the blanket, and when he shook it, pink flecks leapt like dusk insects and then fell in a pattern that looked, for a heartbeat, like letters. I didn't read them. I didn't want to know. We leashed the dogs. Moxie pulled toward the exit with unusual obedience. Biscuit pressed against Samir's leg hard enough to leave a lean. As we stepped away, I glanced back at the plaque. The 1879 had melted to 2025, or I wanted to believe it had. When I blinked, the 9 returned and the 2 kicked back a century. I decided to give reality the benefit of the doubt and my nerves the benefit of a cab. On the sidewalk, the world resumed its credible soundtrack. A bus groaned. A siren stitched a line across the block and dissolved. Samir put his shirt back on like he could zip his dignity with it. "I'm sorry I made it worse," he said. "I wanted to fix the frisbee, the ants, the everything. I made us the show." "You did," I said, because I love the truth when it sits down without knocking. "And also you didn't run away." "I wanted to," he confessed. The blanket grew a hand. "Yeah," I said, and we laughed, soft and a little unhinged. We walked to my building. On the stoop, I told him my boundary again. No public undressing, even for ants. No jokes about my underwear, unless I start them. Ask before volunteering my body for a bit. "Ask," he repeated like a password. "I can do that." I meet Matteo over peaches, which feels like the start of a very specific poem. I'm Freya, Reykjavik-born, data analyst with a mischievous streak and a soft spot for stone fruit. He's a Santa Fe ceramicist who talks about glaze the way people talk about weather. We both reach for the same sun-warm Alberta, our fingers graze, and he says, "Sorry, go ahead," with the kind of earnest that makes me want to test it. I used to intern at this market. Lost and found once saved my passport after it fell out of an outer pocket I swore was secure. The stalls haven't changed much, chalkboards that smudge like memories, a busker's amp that squeals exactly when the sun hits the metal just so, kids orbiting a juggler with sticky constellations of jam on their cheeks. We decide to walk the loop together. I explain the unspoken rules, sample, smile, step aside, and he nods like he wants to get it right. He wants, I think, to be the kind of person who belongs in a place with hand-lettered signs. The day leans hot. Asphalt breathes tar. The goat cheese stall, a small heaven, turns out to be cash only. "No problem," Matteo says, patting his back pocket. Then his front. Then his jacket. His smile falters. "Huh? No wallet?" I ask gently. "It was here." He pats again, as if the thing might manifest out of embarrassment. His ears color. Behind us the busker's amp does its signature squeal. A chalkboard arrow on a nearby bread tent swivels to point, absurdly, right at us. "We'll find it," I say, because I have faith in the market's weird benevolence. He does not. Anxiety tightens his jaw. His eyes land on the juggler, a teenager in suspenders making 3 tangerines look like a galaxy. "Keep an eye on your pockets around performers," Matteo says, too loudly. The juggler's mother straightens from her folding chair like a thunderhead. "Absolutely not," I murmur, stepping between accusation and target. We're looking before we blame. But the word blame has already found oxygen. Matteo, trying to take it back, tries to joke. "I'm sure he didn't." He gestures too big, catches a basket of cherry tomatoes with his wrist, and the world tilts into slapstick. Red marbles scatter underfoot. A small child shrieks with delight. I skid, regain my balance, and watch Matteo perform ungainly penance. Knees and apologies and tomatoes cupped back into the basket one by one. He's mortified. I'm cringing for both of us. Scale says we owe for the ones that touched the ground. The vendor announces, not unkindly. She plops the basket onto a digital scale. The digits flicker, then settle into block letters. HUNGRY, before snapping to 0.86 pounds. I pretend I didn't see the message. The vendor pretends the scale doesn't have a sense of humor. Mateo pretends he didn't almost accuse a teenager of theft. We breathe. We buy the tomatoes. We circle again, checking stalls, retracing, me keeping my tone airy so his panic doesn't sweat all over everything. A woman at the herb stall hums an Icelandic lullaby. Sofu unga aston mean. Exactly the way my grandfather did, the melody slipping around vowels like warm water. When she catches my face, she winks, like this is all part of a scavenger hunt only certain people can see. At the tomato stall, the same scale flashes hungry. Again when Mateo leans on the table. Okay, he says, brittle. Is the entire market sentient? Only on Saturdays, I say. I'm joking. I think. We stop at a melon table. He knocks with a potter's knuckle. He says you can hear the hollowness of readiness, and I teach him my grandmother's method, a gentle listening against the netted rind. We're mid-lesson when the busker's amp squeals at a frequency that goes straight through my teeth. Mateo, penitent and jangled, tries to help by adjusting the amp. He turns a knob, thumps the side, and unleashes an ungodly feedback wail that stops conversations in a 12-stall radius. People glare. The busker snatches the amp back. Mateo's hands go up in surrender. I was trying, he starts, and I touch his elbow. Let it go, I whisper, which is one of those phrases that means 20 things. We reach the information tent. Lose something? The woman asks, not because she's psychic, but because she has a basket labeled lost things that found US. On top, Mateo's wallet. Relief hits him so hard he stumbles. You're a saint, he tells the woman, and she smiles. I'm a clerk. She passes the wallet over, and with it, a photograph, one of those instant printer ones from the crafty stall down the lane. The photo shows us standing at a peach stand we haven't visited yet, my head tipped toward him, his mouth about to laugh. Behind us, a chalkboard reads "Now ripe" in a handwriting I recognize from my intern days. The timestamp in the corner is 5 minutes from now. Fun, I say. It comes out thin. Mateo's eyes widen with delight and freak out in equal parts. How? We time-traveled, I deadpan. He laughs, grateful to be given a script. Okay, let's go meet future us. On the way, hunger ambushes us. My stomach growls loud enough to attract butterflies. Rule, I say. No accusations while hungry. Rule, he agrees. He's chastened. He's also trying to shake off the wet embarrassment that's clung since the tomatoes. To lighten himself, he decides to impress a circle of kids by juggling 3 apples. I used to do this in studio warm-ups, he tells me, and tosses them in the air. For a glorious 2 seconds, he is indeed a galaxy. Then gravity remembers itself. An apple bounces off his forearm and into a crate of cherries. The second smacks the table edge and splits. The third arcs to the ground and explodes near a toddler's crock. A collective woe rises. The vendor, patient in the way of saints and clerks, hands him a broom. He sweeps. His ears go back to Santa Fe red. We surrender. We take shade under a jacaranda whose blossoms have decided to be confetti. I boot my budgeting app and show him how to set an impulse stall limit. He nods and pretends to understand, and then actually does. He asks me to show him again, slower. I do. He shows me melon tapping again, slower. We share tart lemonade and invent a penalty for breaking the hunger rule. You have to tell one true thing you were avoiding. I wanted to impress you enough that you wouldn't notice I don't always know where my wallet is, he says. I wanted to be the cool market whisperer who doesn't flinch at haunted scales, I say. He grins, and we feel more like 2 people and less like slapstick sketches. When the photo's timestamp ticks into the present, we stand, half expecting choreography to seize our limbs. We walk to the peach stand. The vendor, a woman with a straw hat that says Peach Heathen, winks. There you are, she says, as though she's been waiting. The chalkboard reads "Now ripe" in my old boss's handwriting. My stomach does a nostalgia flip. We stand where the photo says we stood. I tip my head the way I seem to, and Mateo commits to the laugh he looked about to have. The vendor slides 2 perfect peaches across the table. For the trouble, she says. And the show. We don't ask what show. We pay with actual money. On the way out, we pass a berry stall. I pick 1 strawberry, exactly the shape that feels like promise, and slip it into my pocket. For later, I say, NSFW enough for 2 consenting adults with doors that close. He blushes in a color I like even more than Santa Fe red. 4 walls beat a swarm of bees, he says, quoting me back to myself from earlier when I abandoned a sample because 3 honeybees loved me too much. We matched on Tinder because we were both posting through a breakup, me with Sichuan memes, him with soft boy bravado about healing via noodles. I'm Mei, born in Chengdu, witty perfectionist with a love of rules that look like play. He's Julian, Boston-raised, tender chaos in a denim jacket. He wrote, I can handle mala like a champ, and I typed, prove it, before common sense could steal my thumb. The hot pot hall glowed neon like a fever dream. Steam fogged the windows and our glasses. The room thumped with a bass line and the clatter of ladles against enamel. We were seated beneath a red paper lantern whose tassels trembled in the air conditioning as if breathing. The server set down a divided pot, half bone broth, half scarlet oil shimmering with chilies and peppercorns that looked like constellations. I ordered extra without blinking. He grinned like a dare had a flavor. Our knees met under the table. Chili oil freckled our cheeks. He did a theatrical spin with a curl of beef and the broth geysered, tagging my neckline with a comet tail of red. The burn was instant and intimate. I hissed. He panicked and reached for napkins, then realized they were paper, then realized paper near an open flame was a bad idea. Too late. A corner smoldered. He smothered it with a plate while the table to our left applauded, as if this were part of the show. I laughed because the alternative was killing the date at minute 9. A server arrived with club soda and a murmur in my mother's dialect. Careful, she said, an old warning folded into a new voice. Hot things invite hot things. My grandmother said it when a room got too noisy, too bright. Heat draws the knot clean. We were already too hot. Anyone could see it. Julian touched the backs of his knuckles to my cheek, a sweet idiot gesture, and I kissed him, capsaicin attention, a grenade. For one pure second we were both 16, daring each other into pain. Then we broke apart, hissing, eyes watering, laughing the helpless laugh of people who know the waiter is judging them. We retreated to the restroom to rinse lips, gulp water, steady. Okay, I said to the mirror. We will respect chemistry. He nodded, hair damp where he'd splashed his face, boyish suddenly. I do this thing, he said, sheepish. When I feel small, I perform. I don't know when to stop. Noted, I said, and meant both the confession and the plan. Back at the table, something had shifted, like a stage between scenes. The QR menu on my phone reloaded to a photo of the restaurant's interior that didn't match the room. The old lacquered chairs, the yellowed wall calendar from 2 New Years ago, the hand-lettered special for duck blood we hadn't seen on any board. When I looked up, the chairs around us were the sleek black ones I'd clocked when we sat down. I refreshed, the photo stayed wrong. Chopsticks at neighboring tables clattered in sudden sync, an insect chorus. The silver ladle in our pot rose a fraction, and tilted into the boil, as if a hand beneath the surface had lifted it. A ribbon of kelp unfurled, hair-like, brushing the rim like a tease. Cool, Julian said too loudly, eager to turn weird into magic. He reached to swirl it for effect, and the broth heaved. A sheet of red sloshed into the mild side, and then over, down the table, finding a businessman's cuff with vindictive accuracy. The man jerked, swore, and stood, flinging droplets. Heads turned. Our server arrived with towels, and Julian went scarlet to match the broth. I'm so sorry, he kept repeating, napkins disintegrating in his hands. I tried to help, and in doing so knocked my chopsticks to the floor. When I bent to retrieve them, something brushed the back of my hand, slick and cool. I straightened so fast my chair squealed. The family at the next table wore identical black masks. Fashion, maybe, or allergy, or a game I wasn't invited to. Their eyes were too still. No one else seemed to notice. When the smallest child turned her head, the mask didn't move with the face. I looked away and counted peppercorns to steady myself. 8, 16, 32. Ritual has rules. Rules are a rope. Julian tried for levity. Let's do the trick where you numb my tongue with peppercorn and then I pronounce rural juror, he said, and popped a handful. He immediately started coughing so hard a server hustled over with a carafe of water, and the kind of smile you give a toddler who has eaten an eraser. Slow, I said. He waved me off, aspirated again, and a little arc of chili flecked the tablecloth in a dotted line that looked, stupidly, like stitches. To distract himself from his own body, he pulled his phone to take a cute video. The screen showed us with doll-smooth faces. Behind us, in the reflection of the window, a figure leaned toward our table, hair long and wet dark, head tilted. In the live photo, the chopsticks clacked even after we'd gone still. Fun filter, he said, voice too high. He took another. The figure was closer. I'm turning the heat down, I said. We're inviting the wrong kind of audience. He spun the dial gently. The broth bubbled harder. He spun more. The flame licked sideways, blue turned tiger orange, a flare he hadn't asked for. A server slid in like a guardian and turned the knob with practiced finality. "Some burners have their own ideas," she said. "Don't humor them." She patted Julian's sleeve the way you calm a dog during fireworks and moved on. He stood to flag another towel, and his hip clipped a rolling cart. Plates chimed. A dish of sliced tripe, white honeycombs, a texture that scares beginners, sluiced into a stranger's lap. More attention. More apologies. He tried to pick up the pieces and knocked the burner again. The paper lantern above us dipped as if nodding in disapproval. I could feel the mortification radiating off him like heat off the pot. "Sit," I said softly, and he obeyed like a man who knows he's lost the thread. He laced his fingers, looked at me instead of the room, and whispered, "I am performing at you because I don't know how to let you see me small." The honesty took the air out of my chest. For a moment, the clacking stopped. Even the masks seemed to tilt toward us. "I test people," I admitted. "I set the heat to see who burns." "Then we are a problem set," he said, and managed a wry smile. We lowered the heat. We ordered a mild broth like a white flag. We slid noodles in one by one like wishes you don't dare say out loud. The ladle stayed down. The kelp drifted like an old woman's hair in a bath. The black-masked family's chairs scraped. When I glanced over, they were gone, but a ring of damp remained on the vinyl, 5 circles like palm prints. At the register, the receipt printed with a timestamp 10 minutes in the future. The cashier tore it off and looked at the clock on the wall, then back at the slip. "Huh," she said, and handed it over. Outside, the neon open sign flickered and held, then blinked once into note before correcting itself. We walked into air that didn't taste like oil. We stood on the sidewalk because the night felt like it might have a last word. "Bubble tea?" I asked because aftercare is a love language. "Yes," he said, because maybe learning is his. On the way, we passed the restaurant window. In the reflection, we were almost normal, except that for a heartbeat our mouths moved a half second out of sync with our words. I tell people I'm good with knives because I'm good with stories. You need rhythm, clean cuts, a reveal. That's what I say when I want to impress. The truth is I improvise, and knives prefer choreography. Kaido messages me on Hinge like he did in college, precise lowercase, as if each word is a plate he's placing just so. We debated together at Emory a lifetime ago. He clocked my ums for sport, and I weaponized charm. Now he's in town for a contract, I'm between projects, and we book a sushi workshop because it sounds like a date that keeps our hands busy and our mouths full. A truce between precision and play. The studio smells clean, like starch and sea. Steel tables. Bright knives laid like punctuation. The instructor, white coat, composed smile, introduces tuna as if it were royalty. Kaido's already washing, fingers moving in a ritual I don't know. "Welcome back," he says softly. He means to Atlanta, to each other, to a version of us that can stand on the same tile without a timer buzzing. We take our station. He lines up the nori with reverence. I crack a joke about sashimi crimes, and he smiles without showing teeth. The instructor demonstrates cuts, long, low, no sawing, and Kaido's first slice gleams, a perfect pink flag laid on white rice. I'm proud for him before I'm jealous. My roll puffs, leans, sighs. He reaches to adjust my grip. "Like this," he murmurs, the old cadence, help slipping toward correction. I don't flinch, but I feel the debate timer click on, phantom beeps counting down my patience. "Trust me," I say, tipping the blade with a flourish. The knife kinks left and kisses my index finger. A bright dot of red blooms. Everything stops. The instructor's smile thins. Her voice turns clinical. "Gloves," she says to the room. Latex rustles like wind in cheap leaves. Kaido's breath speeds up, then evens out into 4s. I raise my hand, blood up, like I'm in class. "Tiny," I say, breathless. "See? Tiny." The world holds still as a cut onion. He's already there with a band-aid. "Press," he says, his accent wrapping the word. I do. He does not say I told you so. It's in the air anyway, a quiet fish. When I look up, the glass fish case has fogged from the inside. It's not steam from the rice, it's a breath on the wrong side. Condensation scribbles and slips. When it clears, the tuna loins rest in a new order, as if someone rearranged them behind the glass while we watched. "Did they?" I start. "They always rotate inventory," Kaido says too quickly. He reaches for the faucet, left barely open for rinsing, and shuts it. It opens itself a hair and starts to tap. 1, 2, 3, 4, precise as a metronome, exact as his breaths. I laugh because it's easier than naming the hairs rising on my arms. Haunted sink, I say. He doesn't laugh. We start again. He coaches. Elbow in. Cut away. I feel myself shrink until I am only hands. In the steel backsplash our reflections lag by a beat. My mouth makes a joke, and the sound arrives late like a dubbed movie. His reflection glances at me before he does. Do you see? I begin, and he says, focus, as if attention is a kindness you can push across the counter. Rice grains I've spilled scatter into an oval. It's nothing, then it's an eye. I blink. So does it. Kaido blinks first, and the oval collapses into chaos. Don't press, he says. His voice is gentle. My bones remember a judge's ballot where he wrote, Amara too performative. Kaido controlled the room. I smile with my teeth and keep cutting like I'm not counting how often he says my name as a correction. The instructor glides by, encouraging, efficient. Earlier her band-aid was on the left thumb, now it's on the right. I open my mouth to say something small, and saying like, did you switch hands? But the words dissolve in my throat. All good? She asks, and the faucet stops mid-beat, silence like a blink. All good. I echo, and the drip resumes 1, 2, 3 for faithful as prayer. When I try to roll, my nori rips. Kaido's fingers lift mine, practiced, almost tender. Here. The student next to us snorts. He's made a perfect dragon roll and wants witnesses, and I bristle. I can do it, I say. Quiet. Not quiet enough. Kaido freezes. It's not the knife, it's me. He withdraws his hands as if from a flame. Of course. He looks at the instructor, then at me, then at a place just above me, where his reflection seems to live a half-second ahead. He has always been careful with words. Now he's careful with air. We stand like two magnets with mismatched poles. Break, I say as lightly as I can. I'm bleeding drama. He nods, startled by the sudden mercy, and we step back from the line. In the hallway the cicadas are recorded. The studio plays a summer tape for ambience because outside is winter, but it still makes my skin remember Georgia nights. I press the band-aid harder and say, you correct my verbs like they're knives. He flinches. I police words, he admits. Not yours only. Mine. My accent. I learn to measure before I speak, so I don't cut the wrong thing. He looks at me, finally at me, not at that half-second ahead. I am trying to help in the only way I trust. And I joke. I say, so I don't feel small when I'm learning out loud. We've recreated college in a room with fish. He breathes in 4 out 4. The faucet inside the studio answers like a metronome we can't switch off. I hold up 3 fingers. New exercise, I say. You tell a wild, imperfect story. I count 3 breaths before I say a word. He blinks, the rare kind, slow, consenting. Once, he begins, and the word is a plate he risks dropping. I failed my nana's tamagoyaki. She said it tasted like apology. I hid the pan and told her I didn't like eggs. He looks ashamed. I stay silent, 3 breaths, and he continues, braver. She made me make it again. 10 times. Then she laughed and ate the worst one because she said someone must love the beginnings. His voice cracks. I keep my pact and do not rush in with a bomb. When I finally speak, it's not a quip. I like that story broken, I say. Thank you. We go back inside. The fish case is clear and orderly. The faucet behaves. The reflections align, almost. We work modestly. No flourish, no dragon. A tight little futomaki with cucumber, tamago, a strip of tuna that isn't a metaphor. He cuts, then hands me the knife. I cut, and do not look at the steel for ghosts. We plate together. He bows small, and I bow back. The instructor claps softly, like we are a scene concluding. On the way out, our coats rustle like paper. The Polaroid wall in this place would probably show our doubles arguing in black and white. I don't look. We step into an alley that is not an alley, just a space between buildings where the taped cicadas can't follow. The air is winter sharp. He says, ramen next? No knives. No mirrors. Only steam. I say yes, and we will slurp without apology. He smiles, the careful kind that might grow into something reckless later. We walk. I tuck my bandaged finger into my palm like a secret. Our shadows keep pace, synchronized again, and when the street light blinks, neither of us flinches. We have already decided not to be haunted by each other if we can help it. We have already promised to share the next heat without timing one another's breaths. My coworkers swore Gabe, and I would balance. He's a Milwaukee-born engineer who schedules joy like a maintenance window. I'm a Wellington transplant with a PhD in side-eye, and an allergy to mansplaining. We meet under a catwalk of pipes, lanyards that say visitor, the warm cereal bread aroma of mash wrapping the whole brewery in a tipsy hug. Gabe shows up in a flannel the same color as confidence and starts geeking out before the tour even begins. Closed fermentation, conical tanks, he murmurs, reverent. I'll try not to lick the equipment, I say, and he laughs like it's the first bell of a good evening. 10 minutes later, I baptize my dress in IPA. A sticky patch near the tasting bar kisses the sole of my boot, and I do a graceless ice rink glide. Gabe lunges, we both miss. An entire sampler flight leaps for its freedom and christens me neck to knee. Cold beer finds clever paths. One rivulet slides under my bra strap with malicious precision. My laugh arrives sharp. Well, I say, foreplay by fermentation. NSFW, but still a YouTube joke, and he blushes exactly the right amount. The canning line kicks on, metal shrieking into a roar that turns conversation into charades. Gabe, who loves process, starts narrating with hand gestures. Lids seam purge. I mime towel, and my chest is Niagara. A bachelor party swarms in matching t-shirts, last sip of freedom, and begins heckling. One guy yodels. I pivot to dodge him and catch a swing tap with my hip. The tap burps foam into a waiting glass, unasked. It heaps and settles into a face, eyes, a crooked smile, then collapses when I blink. Gabe points, delighted and rattled, then reaches to refill it. The handle moves by itself, the tiniest tug, like a cat batting a toy. We trail the guide past towering fermenters. Condensation beads run in orderly paths until one patch gathers into letters. ASK. The drips hesitate, then streak away, smearing the word into a pleading blur. I rub my sleeve across it, which somehow feels like a prayer. Gabe's hand hovers above my shoulder, not touching. He wants to help, he doesn't know how. He defaults to volunteer mode. Who wants to taste straight from the bright tank? The guide calls. Her! Gabe crows, pointing at me without looking. The word ask still ghosts the steel behind him. Absolutely not. I say over the canning line din, too late, as the crowd pivots to watch the beer-drenched woman become a demo doll. The guide hands me a sanitized line like a microphone. I paste on a grin, catch Gabe's wince. Boundary. I mouth around the straw. He nods, chastened. Then the sight glass on the tank next to us fills with bubbles that rise downward, like a snow globe that refuses gravity. I elbow him. He blinks. Could be pressure differential, he says, and if I weren't damp and sticky, I might let the explanation be a blanket. Today it's a napkin that keeps missing the stain. The tour monitor flickers as we're herded into the next bay. Schedule, public tour, 3 p.m., private tour, 4:30 p.m. Then the pixels scramble and settle. Private, Gabe plus Tessa. Our names glow like a dare. Did you? He starts. I didn't, I say, baffled, flattered, furious at the part of me that thrills at seeing us as a unit. The bachelor party spots it and gives us a woo straight from a sitcom. My dress squelches. I consider death by flight. In the cold room the guide invites, one brave couple inside. The door sighs shut on its own, weather stripped kissing metal. Frost breathes across the glass in fern patterns that resolve into two very specific silhouettes. A tall one with a flannel collar and a shorter one in a clingy dress. The shorter silhouette's wrist is etched with a thin cracked line. I broke mine when I was 11. I still have the ridge. I press my thumb to it through the fabric, and the frost, which should not know me, knows me anyway. Gabe says my name like it's an apology. I'm here, he adds, because he's a fixer, and I am suddenly irrationally angry at being cast as something to fix. The room makes a tiny popping noise that can explode somewhere to our left, spraying stout confetti across the bachelor party. They cheer, sticky and triumphant. The canning line screeches to a halt. Silence detonates. A tap pours foam without touching. The face appears again, this time with a mustache. Bachelor party yodels. Gabe looks at me like a dog who brought the wrong stick. I messed up, he mouths, because the machinery is too loud again, or because apologies shouldn't be public. I grab his sleeve and tug him through a side door into the loading bay. The air out here is forklift-breathed, quiet, sane. We smell pallets and rain. I'm still damp, my slip is staging a coup, and I feel that thin, crackling line between us, the one we both keep stepping on. No volunteering my body, I say. Not for hops, not for spectacle. Copy, he says immediately. When things go sideways, I go into demo mode. Fix, distract, optimize. It's bad. He peels off his hoodie and offers it, eyes carefully on mine, not my neckline. It smells like spreadsheets and pine, and a boy who tries too hard because caring has always sounded like that in his house. I pull it on. The zipper laughs at my dignity and then closes obligingly. Warmth is a mercy. Thank you, I say, and mean more than the cotton. He exhales like a balloon that chose to land instead of pop. We rejoin at the edge, feral cats in a room full of stomping. We split a giant pretzel and invent silly tasting notes like spells. Bread, Gabe says, rain. I add, relief. We agree, bumping shoulders. The foam head in my glass makes a new face, tongue out, childish, and melts when I glare. The sight glass remembers how to obey gravity. The condensation writes nothing at all. The schedule monitor goes back to public. 5 p.m. like it never met us. We leave before the last pour. A mellow cider bar down the street takes us in like a quiet ant. We sit on stools that don't vibrate with machines and debrief. Saving foam art for private shows, I say, which is as spicy as I'll get in a room with coasters. His grin finds its home again. No brewery bathroom kisses, he adds mock solemn. Ever. Gum. I offer, fishing in my bag. He taps the packet. For later, he says, tone flirt light, consent warm and present between us like the good kind of carbonation. We clink glasses softly. Apple. Calm. My dress stops clinging to disasters, it clings to me. I arrive 5 minutes early, because that's what people who are trying do. I'm standing on the sidewalk outside the brick cooking school, watching condensation bead and run on the windows. Miami taught me humidity. This is different, steam and cold breath making little galaxies on the glass. I replay Marco's last voice note in my head, a sauce that hugs, not smothers. Even his competence has a swagger. He appears with a paper bag of lemons tucked into his elbow like a bouquet. For brightness, he says, the tea softened by Turin, and I laugh because of course he brought props. He smells faintly of espresso and starch. We do a quick, careful hug. No cheek kisses when knives are in our immediate future, and check in at the front desk with a receptionist who hands us aprons that say pasta, a love language. The room smells like brown butter and ambition. Couples ring bright steel stations, burners dark for the moment, knives aligned like exclamation points. The instructor wears a crisp jacket and a theater smile. He talks mirepoix ratios while we wash hands. Marco murmurs, too much carrot, and I pretend not to hear the edge in his smile. We've only traded voice notes, never video. We joked that mystery tastes better. Up close, he looks exactly like he sounds. Precise, pleased to be right. We start dicing onions. Grip like this, he says, sliding my fingers into his preferred posture. His hands are warm, his guidance gentle, but it still reads correction. I nod anyway. Conflict makes my throat close. The instructor asks who wants to flambe the shrimp for the scampi demo. I raise my hand to decline before he finishes the sentence. I have a shellfish allergy, I say. Severe. Of course, Marco says quickly. We will keep distance. When the pan ignites, flame whooshes high enough to toast my eyebrows with memory. The sprinklers cough themselves alive. A cold, fine rain prickles my scalp and turns our aprons clingy. People squeal and clap like we're on a game show. I laugh because it's what I do when I want to be the kind of person who can laugh. In the bathroom, under the blower's dull roar, I look in the mirror and practice. Please stop coaching, I tell my reflection. I need collaboration, not correction. It sounds reasonable and brave, and like someone I'm trying to be. I dry my face with paper towels that leave little clouds of lint on my cheeks and go back out. At our station, the induction timer blinks 010, 009, 008, then skips and flickers midnight and keeps going. 00:01, -00:02, as if time is a shallow pan and we've let it burn. Weird, I say. Marco taps it and chuckles, American electronics. He's laying the recipe card flat when I notice our names printed at the top in a fine coating of flour, as if someone dusted a stencil. Lena and Marco, Pomodoro. I rub my thumb across the letters and leave a clear swipe, but when I lift my hand, the white returns, my name blooming back into place grain by grain. Nice touch, he says. They personalize. The instructor is across the room. No one stands near us with a sifter. I line up my knife. The blade is bright, reflecting the copper pot on the shelf behind Marco. In the pot's curve I see a woman standing just over his shoulder, older, hair pulled severe, mouth a stern line that says too much carrot. I turn, but there's only the shelf and a neat row of copper bottoms. Everything okay? Marco asks, and I tell myself it's the shape of the room, reflection math, pareidolia from too many mirrors in my dance studio days. We cook. He corrects the heat. I fix the salt. He reaches for my spoon to taste, and I let him because my throat tightens when I say no. The sauce leaves a trail when I stir, then another, and then, oddly, a circle in the exact same groove as if the pot expects a ritual. Around and around, the spoon moves by habit I don't have yet. A knife I've laid flat keeps turning blade up between blinks. I set it flat. I chop. I glance down, blade up again, a thin line of light slicing the ceiling. Gravity is drunk, I mutter, and Marco laughs, thinking I'm being playful. The sprinklers finally stutter off, leaving a mist that curls in ringlets above the burners. For a heartbeat, the steam writes a word. Brava. It unspools into nothing when I focus on it. Tell me if I'm overstepping, Marco says, and relief warms me, but then he positions my wrist again, and the relief cools. You're overstepping, I say softer than I planned. He blinks. I try again with the sentence from the bathroom. I need collaboration, not correction. Ah. He deflates a little, or maybe just exhales a lot. I am, what is the word, bossy in kitchens. He turns down the flame until the sauce quiets and looks at his hands. My nana, she cooked like a general. When she died, I kept her voice as armor. He glances into the pot like he expects to see her there. I don't tell him I already did. We reset. Mild tomato. A shared spoon. We taste and nod in the same beat. The timer has stopped counting the wrong way. It sits calmly at 12:34, which feels like a joke and a dare. Nice number, I say. Forward and backward, he agrees, and it should be comforting. It is a little. The instructor strolls by, compliments our color, asks if we pre-printed our names because the staff doesn't do that. I show him the card. It's blank. Flour covers my fingertips. Probably condensation, I say, even though that isn't an answer to any question in the room. We plate. Marco adds lemon for brightness, and we both grin. Eating shoulder to shoulder feels like calling a truce neither of us declared out loud. Somewhere behind him a copper reflection shifts, and I decide to look only at our plates and the way he waits for my reaction before taking his own bite. It's good, simple and honest, and not showing off. We box leftovers. The class thins. The knives stay where we leave them, finally, as if whatever they wanted to say has been said. Outside, the cold rinses the last of the steam from my hair. Across the street, a diner glows like safe harbor. Salad? I offer. Plain, he agrees, hand already reaching for the door like he knows I need a place with laminated menus and fluorescent sincerity. In the booth, under a spotlight that doesn't follow us, we set rules. No surprise shellfish. No mid-sentence critiques. Ask before touching the spoon. I tell him I carry an EpiPen and show him where it lives in my tote. He nods solemnly, not performative. He tells me about his nana's apartment, the copper pots, the way she clapped when he julienned correctly, how grief taught him to lead with certainty, so he doesn't have to feel the soft underside of not knowing. I tell him about Miami storms, how quickly the sky goes from bright to bruised, and how I've practiced sentences in bathroom mirrors since I was 12. When the check comes, the timestamp reads 10 minutes in the future, and we both laugh because what else can you do when the night insists on being a little haunted? We swap real numbers. On the walk to the train, he says, "Next time, you hold the tongs." I pocket my EpiPen and the promise, and watch our breath lift like new steam into the uncomplicated dark.